Hi, I'm Jennifer Jill Araya.
And I'm Sarah Beth Goer.
Welcome to the Crafting Audiobooks podcast, where we discuss the art and craft of audiobooks, and we aim to go deep quick.
Hello, everyone. Today we have with us Amy Rubinate, narrator, producer, and owner of Mosaic Audio. Amy, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be a part of this podcast.
Yay. Okay, so diving right into question number one, because we love to go deep quick. Could you speak a bit to how your narration experience has influenced your craft work as a producer and vice versa?
I honestly think my starting as a narrator is everything about who I am as a producer. First of all, my mission for Mosaic Audio was really to solve the unsolvable problems of the industry, the things that hurt me or affected me as a narrator. The fact that I spent many years recording out of somebody else's garage in 110-degree heat, and why can't we have a nice place for narrators to record? We should have air conditioning. We should have an engineer. So a lot of my work as a producer, in terms of having my own company, has been very mission-based. And so much of that came out of how kind of wounded I felt as a narrator, with the certain lacks of support that have become embedded in the industry, but that weren't existing when I started, when I was flown to Michigan to record with directors and engineers, experienced, amazing people who had been narrators who became directors and producers and engineers. And, I would get sent to Woodland Hills in LA to PRH. And so I really was very invested in preserving a lot of that model, which I thought, and I still believe, creates the best audiobooks, because we are always at our best when we're performing for and with someone, when we have, immediate support and an immediate audience to perform for. So a lot of my work and how I shaped my company, and how I sort of behave and approach things as a producer and as a director, it stems right out of my work as a narrator.
What I'm really hearing in what you've shared thus far is that you believe that when narrators have physical and what would you call the supportive and
figurative too support? Yeah. Literal and figurative support. It makes a difference. But also, I learned how to direct. I learned how to narrate by working in tandem with people. So there was stuff that I learned by, I remember, just various things when I did my first romance novel, how do I handle this? How do I handle that? I would just straight up ask the director, and it was somebody who had done 300 of her, maybe more, of her own audiobooks before she became a director. And so there were things that she had to teach me, and even just technical things like that I still use as a director, because I direct a lot of authors and celebrities. It's kind of my bailiwick. And I also direct a lot of newer narrators. So I have the opportunity to kind of basically teach people how to narrate in, an hour or less. We got to get them up to speed quickly, right? And then we have to kind of compound that. By the end of the book, they're bringing in techniques and direction that I gave them earlier that day or earlier that week, that I have to say it in a way that they absorb it and make it their own really quickly so that they can apply it. But various things like, how do you get through a phrase that you can't navigate? A tongue twister, for example. Let me see. So I'm reading the question, right? Could you speak a bit about how your narration experience has influenced, right? You fall apart. Could you speak a bit about how your narration experience? So you can go back and do that phrase with pauses. You can navigate it with melody. Melody is one of my best secret tricks. Could you speak a bit about how your narration experience has influenced your craft work? Right? That sometimes it'll sound a little artificial, but better that it sound a little artificial and that you get through it. So many people will go on a flat monotone and then they're like the tongue twister, they're just stuck. They can never get out. This woman said to me, use melody. Take a pause in an unexpected, but not totally inappropriate place that will trick your brain into launching through that issue. And it's such a simple technique and one I've used for years. I would not have known that had someone not been in the booth with me who knew more than I did and who had to navigate that for herself and others, right?
So it's the input of collaboration through the audiobook production process that you were benefiting from as a narrator and seeing that, hey, this is leaving the production world. And is that what prompted you to start Mosaic? Wanting to give that kind of collaboration back?
Well, yeah, about the time that I bought it from Zach Harris, who'd been running it since like 2009, I think. I bought it in 2016. I had become a director at his company. Now I'd done 250 audiobooks by then, so I knew all the tricks. And I'd done the first 150 of those with experienced directors. And there's stuff I use today. I mean, so many things like I remember coming out of my first session with Tony Hudds at PRH, great director, longtime director. He knows all this stuff and he's very encouraging. He's great to work with. I remember him training me when I get to the end of a chapter. He'd be like, bring it home. Like, we really want to land it. We want to, and I call it, give it an ending-y feeling. And then I elaborate with that, with my people I'm directing on what that means and how that feels in your body and how satisfying it is as a listener. And, when I'll play it back for them and be like, that has and then I'll say, technically there's several ways you can do an ending-y feeling. Give it an ending-y feeling. You can slow down. You can, as the Italian, you can retard to the end. You can take greater pauses within your sentences, greater pauses at the end of sentences. And you can give it a downward inflection with your voice, right? There's so many things you can do to end it. And I listen to so many audiobooks where they're just like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? Oh, we got to the end of a chapter. I'm like, there's certain formalities or certain functions, techniques that you need to use to guide people, to guide your listener. It's almost like, okay, so like you're reading a book and it has a chapter end and there's a bunch of space. And on the next page, there's a big fat chapter 2, right? Those are guides or indicators that there's a shift in scene or something is ended and something new is beginning. But if you just get to the end of a chapter and then you start a new chapter, people are like, what? That you almost, and if they always say in acting, don't signpost. These are appropriate places to signpost, right? So you say, when you get to the end of a chapter 2, one day he walked in the wood. You have to give it that shifts in energy, shifts in pitch, tone, all of that. And so these are things that I was taught from day one. He'd say, now bring that ending home, like, I'm just reading you a little bit of the email I sent you. But I can really dig into these 5 others. Looking forward to our chat. Just like, right, it's an ending-y feeling, right? And I remember going into the break room that day and a very experienced narrator that I had met taking classes years before came out of her session, walks into the room, is like, my God, I'm doing a book about geology. I have no idea what I'm saying, but man, am I bringing it home at the end of each chapter. And I was like, it really taught me like, oh, this is a thing and it works and there's a reason and we all do it. And so when I'm directing with authors, let's say, and I'm, there may be a chapter where there's not a good place or feeling or text to be ending-y. And sometimes you just have to slow it down a little bit or take a pregnant pause before the last phrase or take a pregnant pause before the last phrase. It's just always something you can do. And where it gets really tricky is when it's on dialogue and the dialogue doesn't have any reason to be ending and you can still layer in just a tad bit of something that says, now this chapter is coming to a close. So, but I would not have had a language or frame of reference for any of that had I not been live and in person, and being taught the traditions and of the industry by the people who had lived in it longer than I had. And that's something it's tough. It's really lacking today. I mean, I did like my first, 150 audiobooks for the most part in studio with these people. And I'm not sure how to get it back, but in anticipation of our talk, it occurred to me that I would suggest something if you guys are okay with it. Unless you want
Please do, yeah.
We're going to get to like one question because I'm just going on and on.
Okay.
But okay, so I was thinking about this, and when I started directing for Zach for what became my company, Mosaic, I started directing authors right away. Now, it wasn't like I came fully formed out of the egg, ready to direct an author, but I had been directed so many times. I knew what I was looking for. So it didn't come out of nowhere, right? But, I was still feeling my way because it's a new medium. Then I started directing experienced narrators, and some of them were my really good friends who I knew and respected, who didn't really need me to be there that much, but there was a director on the job. Or sometimes I was directing them as an engineer. And this is as I was transitioning, from narration to production. And I would get people who I admired and I would stop them for certain things. And sometimes they would accept it. And sometimes they'd be like, no, that's not what I want to do. And so you learn really quickly, the things that spark you to stop someone as a listener, because I always direct as if I'm a listener. My cue to stop someone is, have I been pulled out of the story for some reason? Right? Now, then I have to assess, have I been pulled out of the story because there's an actual flaw in the read, or because it was something that I was expecting, but they did something different, right? In the first instance, I get to make the correction or suggestion. In the second instance, I have to go, oh, sorry, nope, that was right. Carry on. You have to kind of override your critical brain and only keep your helpful brain. There were also things though that I learned really quickly, that like somebody might have like a really smacky mouth. You can only tell them to brush their teeth or take a drink of water so many times, and then you go, oh, they're a really smacky reader. But if they're a great reader and also smacky, you stop noticing that really quickly on. So I would just kill myself, like brushing my teeth 5 times a day. I now have to have like dental surgery to cover up like missing gums because of how much I hacked away at my mouth when I was narrating 60 books a year, right? And brushing my teeth between every snack or cup of coffee. So I realized that smackiness that I was so resistant to, and we all learn to work around it. We all have our own techniques, whether it's how you hold your mouth, whether it's taking hot water, brushing your teeth a lot, whatever those techniques are, we all do them as professional actors. That's part of our job. But I realized that there was a level that I was digging into that I could let go, a level of mouth noise or imperfection or a click here and there that I was like fussing over, being a editor, producer, all that stuff in my head as I narrated. And I would watch these people just smack away. And I was so involved in their story that I'd forget. And so, yes, it might annoy a listener for a minute, or you might get some jerk proofer or editor who was like, I didn't like all that smackiness because I had to edit it out. But in reality, it really wasn't harming the story. So it caused me to self-assess watching what these people did that I had assumed was wrong, and watching them do it successfully and have it not be a problem. I'd be like, oh, there's room here for me to be a human person in a body in the world, in my work, right? And then there would be other things where I'd want to stop somebody for what was really kind of not a misread, but a tonal incorrect approach, right? So there's many ways you can do a sentence. There's some ways that are just kind of wrong. And there would be times when I would stop somebody and give them a redirect on that, or pose the question that there might need to be a redirect, and they simply wouldn't hear what I was hearing. And after the first or second time, you have to move on. You have to say, okay, unless it's a huge egregious misread or something, you have to say, oh, we're not going to get this one. Carry on, because you can't belabor the point. You can't stymie them by being like, no, you must understand what I'm saying. You have to kind of then ask the question, can I let this one go? Is it going to harm the experience of the listener? Probably not. So you let it go. Certain things where they may not be able to get to the correction. They just may not have it in them, in their understanding or their physiology or their acting skills or whatever it is. That thing is not going to happen. And within one or two tries, and you walk away. What that gave me was, it doesn't matter if every second of a performance is perfect. You have to hone in on the things that are important, that will impact the understanding of the character, the story, the listener's experience. But the perfection of sentence by sentence, accuracy to acting approach doesn't matter. Accuracy to text, yes. But like there can be baubles, or there can be missed moments, or there can be incorrect approaches to a sentence, or even a line of dialogue, and it's okay. And so things like this became so deeply and helpfully informative to me that it changed the whole way that I narrated. It also changed the way I directed and approached, listening, approached casting, approached the whole damn thing. And so one of the things I was trying to think, like, I love this technical approach, because so many people have asked me my origin story, which is great and helpful. And, I've taught a lot of networking and marketing classes off of how I got where I am, right? Or how I got where I got as a narrator. But I've been there, and everybody's been there now, and we've all done that. This is an interesting topic. And so I was thinking, what new thing can I bring to your listeners? And I think it might be this. What if we banded together with people who were at a similar level of experience with us, and we said, hey, I'll do the remote Zoom punch in for your first day of this job, or and you do the same for me. I'll do yours on Friday, you do mine on Saturday. Or let's get together, the four of us, and do like a little practice session. You read me a chapter, I'll read you a chapter, then this other guy will read a chapter, and that kind of thing. And we treat it as if we're the engineer of this session. You could even do punch in remotely, right? Zoom or whatever. We use a different system, but whatever the kids are doing these days, and really be there. And then you start to learn this dance, and your friends will tell you too. They'll be like, I don't like that direction. Nope, you're wrong. That's not what I'm doing. Or, oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Or, oh, I can't get there. Or, oh yeah, Jesus, I didn't even notice. Right. And so all these things teach you. They teach you what's possible. They teach you what's wrong. They teach you what to focus on, maybe what not to focus on. I don't know. It's just an interesting idea I had when I was trying to think, like, the stuff that I learned. How does your modern narrator in this new paradigm of solitude get what I organically got in the industry as it exists? Now, you come into my studio, there's a lot. We work with pretty much every publisher, at least a little bit, and some of them a lot. People get sent into our studio, and I have taught my engineers with the same paradigm that I came up in, right? And they're in a lot of sessions with me where I'm directing. They direct me, and I'll stop. It takes me forever to get through a book, because they'll engineer me, and they're new, and I'm like, oh, okay, see these italics? Whenever there's italics, it means it's internal thought. So you have to drop your voice a little bit, maybe make it a little whispery as a parenthetical aside, like this, blah, 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 blah. And then, I model it for them, right? And so it's just all this, oh, and when this happens, here's how you handle this, and so it takes me like a million hours to do, just like a training session, because I'm like, oh my God, this might be the only chance you get to learn this one thing. Here, I'll tell you, but and I think also, if you do this as an exercise, but you treat it professionally, you treat it as if you're really in a session with this person, and this person is really engineering you or directing you. That's when the truth comes out, not the polite, oh, you're my friend and we're doing this thing together. That's when no, I'm busy. I got to get this done. I don't have enough time to finesse that line. Keep going. It's good enough. People they know innately what they're capable of. They know innately where they're willing to spend time and energy. I need to stop talking on this point now. We should move on. But you get where I'm going with this, right?
I think that model of collaboration is absolutely beautiful. I think it is a wonderful idea. And honestly, in my head, I've got, spinning thoughts for like, I want to give this a try. That sounds really does sound like a way to learn about the industry in a way that new narrators today don't really have the chance to do. I mean, I had probably recorded 200 audiobooks before I was directed the first time.
Wow. And then how do you know what you don't know? So you find your way to get through that tongue twister like we were talking about in the beginning. But wouldn't it have been nice to know about melody as a springboard to launch you through the difficult session? Wouldn't that have saved you a lot of time and headache?
Absolutely. I mean, and the idea of ending the chapters, and those are things I learned through coaching and also through listening to tons of audiobooks, listening like crazy.
But it's a testament to you that you got that out of that, right? You were paying attention and you were looking for the technique within your listening. Somebody else may have missed that completely.
Sure.
So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I don't know. But there's a lot of things I think a lot of traditions and techniques that are being left by the wayside at this point that I feel so lucky to have gotten the benefit of,
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our next question for
Okay. Make this a 1-minute answer.
No, take as much time as you need. But our second question specifically has to deal with auditions. So because you do have that background as a narrator and also have the background as a producer, you have been on both sides of that casting table.
Oh, yeah.
Submitting the auditions and also listening to the auditions.
I have a lot of opinions to spout. And this will be quick. Bullet points. Here's what I think. Pay attention to the instructions. If it says don't slate your name, don't slate your name. Don't be like, hi, I'm Bill Smith and I'm reading for the part of the duck or what. No, nobody cares. What I want to hear when I have a slate of 5 auditions is I want to hear once upon a time. Once upon a time. Once upon a, I want to hear do, and the one that catches me, I listen to again. I A B them, I A C them. Oh, B and C, no. Okay, let me hear them again. I might listen to 30 seconds of one, 30 seconds of another. You need to be able to do that without impediment. If you have to hear somebody's whole introduction, your comparison is lost, and no one has time to lop off your introduction in post or whatever. So the other thing is make your recording robust. Nobody wants to hear you at negative 37 dB. We would like it to be negative 26 to 30 dB, right? It needs to be robust. We don't need a mastered audition. We just need the gain to be up high enough that we can hear you. Because again, nobody has time to deal with it in post. I often do, so everybody gets a level playing field. Because they took all that time to audition for me. Hey, can you bump this guy up? But it's one thing if everyone is present and everyone's audition sounds like this, then you get the one guy who's going like this. He's not going to get the job. Nobody wants to have to turn the dial in irritation, right? So that's 2 things. Number 3, there's ways to cheat out. I just did an audition where it was a really good book. They wanted this sort of like it was a book about alcoholism, and a lot of tough things happened to this person. They wanted something that's sort of a breezy Ryan Reynolds, we're all in this together kind of read, was how it was described to me. But they gave me the most gut-wrenching scene. So I was like, now what? No one can to be breezy Ryan Reynolds is at his most glib is not going to maybe get them the job. No, it is not going to land the text that they were given, but that's what they want in order to get the job. So I actually talked to the auditioners. I was like, okay, guys, we have maybe a paragraph to do the bright, breezy Ryan Reynolds thing before it goes deep. So I don't know what techniques you guys want to use, but maybe you resist going too maudlin or too raw with the tough stuff. Maybe you skate a little bit along the surface, but you can't stay breezy and cool and like glib through your wife leaving you and losing your children. You can't. So how do we give them what they say they want with the scene that does not give you the opportunity to reflect it? So mostly I will stay out of it. This one was really tough though, because what I was asking for couldn't be done in that scene really that much. So I gave them maybe some options of like, I know this is what we're asking for, but this isn't conducive to it. So maybe try and fit it in as you can. Maybe don't go as dark as you usually would. Like there's, but again, I said like, look, navigate it how you will. This is just kind of what I'm thinking, because I know what I was giving them was an impossibility. I was like, here's two sets of things that don't match. Go, but normally I stay out of the way. But okay, so but the things that I suggested would be things that you'll want to suggest for yourself. Like, how do I navigate these two opposing things? How do I let in that little bit of that breezy quality with this really tough thing? And so you have to start asking yourself the questions, what would somebody do in this situation? Okay, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do that. You maybe give it a couple of tries. Okay, so what else? Because overall, what I'm saying is sometimes the script that you're given does not give you the best chance of delivering your best thing. There was another script I had to send this week. Again, I cast probably, I don't know, at this point, maybe it's 150 books this year. So there's a lot of stuff that comes through, right? And there was another scene where it was like, but dude, come on, man. It was like the jerk at the like frat party. Nobody is going to sound good doing the dopey jerk at the frat party. Like everybody sounded like shit. The first minute of the audition, there was no way around it. If they were delivering on that character, they sounded horrible and amateurish, which is what that character would sound like. So the auditions haven't come back yet, but I need to say what I'm going to say to the client is, hey, this was a tough one because there was that weird dopey character, didn't really give him a fighting chance of shining. Maybe, just bear that in mind as you listen to these auditions. Everything settles into their normal narration at a minute 20, so there's stuff that I can do to kind of help out the narrator. I mean, I could have changed the scene, but this is what I was given. And, if I get to choose it, I'm not going to choose that, but sometimes you're stuck. You have to, they want you to show certain things. So the other thing is, read the instructions. I can't tell you how many people will send me like a WeTransfer or something. And I'm like, I specifically say, and I used to say it in bold and all caps with stars asterisks because nobody would read it. Now I just am like, please trust me and read the audition. So it's like, please return me an MP3 of your audition as a reply to this email, because when I'm doing sometimes I'm doing 7 auditions in the same day. And sometimes those 7 auditions have 13 people total, right? So we don't do FTP. I do it all through email. And so the best way for me to keep track of it is if you all reply to the same thread. And then when it comes time for me to deliver, I go through that thread and I cull out all the. Now, if I don't have enough replies, or if I'm really particularly want somebody and very specific to be a part of that audition and they haven't replied, I'll be like, hey, you're planning on sending that in? But no one has time to babysit your audition. So it's on you to get the audition in, right? So when you sent me a WeTransfer or a Hightail or whatever, I'm not looking for that. So I'm going to assume you passed on the audition and just didn't have time to tell me. So all that time you have wasted because I don't even know your audition's there. I cannot tell you enough. If there's instructions, just follow them. I can't tell you. And I'm talking old pro narrators. And then they still send me a WeTransfer. It's like, I'm replying in this email with my WeTransfer link. I'm just like, look, it's an MP3. It's like, how many bits? Just send it. I just want to click it, download it, and put it in a folder. That's it. So those are the things I would recommend.
Well, in our industry in particular, those specifics of following directions in the email is a huge part of the job interview, even more so than in other acting professions, because we're responsible for so much. Most of us are recording in home studios and responsible for so much beyond just the performance. So if we can't follow instructions, that's a bad sign for being able to work, peacefully together.
Well, and I get why people do it. Like, I'm distracted. I have ADHD. Like, I had to dig. I was like, I carefully put the instructions for this Zoom in my calendar notation. Then I was like, oh no, I put the reply link in. I don't actually have the Zoom link, and I had to go digging for it. So I get it. We're all busy. We're all distracted, me especially. And so I understand it. But it also just makes the job impossible. And it's so easy to get passed over. It's like, I don't have time. Maybe he sent it to me some other way, but I don't have time to find it, And I don't think people realize how much we're casting. I mean, I don't know if everybody is that much all the time, but it's a lot. And sometimes it'll be like 20 people on one of those multicasts, and you have maybe 3 choices of each or 5 choices of each, and it just becomes unmanageable. So super important to read the instructions.
I'm noticing some themes emerge from our conversation overall, which are both community, that I can hear how meaningful and important that is to you, both in terms of the art of audiobooks and in terms of communication and your eagerness to teach and help. And so I was really just wanting to sort of highlight that theme that's bringing everything you're sharing together for a moment.
Thank you. Yeah, it is important. And I really, it's funny, I was talking to somebody about this at a party. I think, Jennifer, you were there. I was saying that I remember being a novice baby voice actor 30 years ago or something. And the two things happened to me where somebody who had nothing, just like me, introduced me to her best client. And I'll never forget it. She was like, you want to work more in video games? Oh my God, I have to introduce you to so-and-so. He uses me like every week. And then he started using me every week. And then he would use both of us. But I remember thinking like, oh my God, like I came out of theater and cabaret, which are not quite as uncompetitive. And I remember the whole world opening up thinking like, this woman has nothing, just like I do. And she gave me the biggest thing that she has. She shared it with me. It was so extraordinary. And then there was another woman who I had a weird casting couch experience, and I was so disillusioned. And I was like, this is the world I'm coming into. And I called her crying, and she was, a senior member of the acting community and very successful. And she was like, oh, honey, she's like, I'm going to fix this. She like gave me a job as like an admin in her recording studio, gave me free voice lessons for like 3 years. And her name's Desiree Goyette and her husband, Ed Bogus. And they had a recording studio, and they did, they're just amazing composers and lyricists and, ad copywriter. They do everything. And she's a beautiful songwriter. And she just was like, I remember she just wanted to solve the indignities and like tragedies of the industry that we all have to go through. She knew she was like 10 years ahead of me, and she had the ability to give me something. And so she just gave it like freely. And the coolest thing, she told me that her niece, Abigail Reno, has entered our industry, and she's like, hey, can you help her out? And I was like, come help her out. Oh my God, like, let me at her, like I was so excited to be able to pay back this gift. And it was, and it turned out that Abigail Reno, like, I think I gave her like 3 auditions. I just happened to have 3 auditions that were perfect for her. And she just landed them all and got the job. It was like, blew my mind. And, but she'd already kind of established herself. She was already working. But it was so fun for me to see, like, this must be how Desiree felt when she gave me my shot. And now I have the joy of watching this flower and unfold in the future. But I've always taken those 2 circumstances as like beacons, right? So it's just like a big part of my story and my flowering of my own soul, to be able to pay that forward because someone demonstrated it for me. And it's just been, and this community has been a great giver and recipient in so many ways, and so many amongst so many people of that ethos, which I just found out the other day is ethos and not ethos, to blow some of your minds.
There was a thread discussing that in the narrator community, I believe.
I was like, what?
Oh, the fun words that we know how to say.
Yeah.
I I love the respect that you obviously have for the quality of our community, Amy. And um, just on a personal note, I have to say that every time I've interacted with you in Facebook groups in person, I have absolutely seen you respond and continue that level of openness in this community. And
Thank you. That's been really important for me. Yeah. And it's just the community is really set up for us to be able to do that for each other, isn't it?
yeah.
It's pretty great.
Well, I think, members, like, why is it set up that way? Because of the people in the community who choose to make
Yeah.
it that way. And I think that you are a leader in that regard.
Thank you. And I also take advantage of opportunities that others have, like Andy Arndt has created a beautiful community of women, that support each other. And, there's just so many great, it all layers and cascades, in a cool way.
And because this is such a solo enterprise for most narrators,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
it really allows us to feel like we have colleagues with us every day at the water cooler.
Oh my God.
Where we actually are is in our own little padded rooms, aka recording booths.
I don't know what I do without Facebook. It's like I always call it my happy place, even though sometimes it's not happy. I feel like I can really talk to people in our community there, and I hope it doesn't go away because I mean, especially gosh, during the pandemic, it kind of kept me sane. Like, oh, I have people to talk to. They get what
Well, I'm
get it.
gonna ask you both a question along this regard.
Yeah.
I'm always mindful, when I was a little girl, I was always like left out of social connections
Oh,
and things like that. And so I'm always mindful, like somebody might be listening right now and be like, that community sounds great, but I don't feel like I'm a part of it. I'm trying to be, I want to reach out, but I don't feel like I belong, or how do I connect? What do either of you have any advice for that person that's like, I want to be a part and I'm not yet? What would you tell that person?
sure. I mean, well, first of all, you can get involved in person. I mean, all the new people I tell, join the APA, join PANA, pronarrators.org, and audiopub.org. Get involved in these groups in person. You can volunteer. They need volunteers. You can work with people, and then they're like, "Hey, do you want to join my secret group of people who love dogs and also narrate?" I'm in a secret group of people who have ADHD and narrate. And it's not super active. I wish it was more active. I probably should post more, but I think I love that it exists, but you don't come into the community knowing that stuff. It's sort of, you have to kind of invest and get to know people. But also, I remember Exie Sands when I was first trying to get on Twitter, and I was like so intimidated by it. And she was like, Amy, just follow the people I follow. And I was like, oh, okay. And so, you don't follow everybody, but like you could follow each of us. You could follow people who are more senior, who you admire, who you think have cool friends, and just pick like, oh man, I met that girl at a party. I really liked her. Like, what if Amy's friends with her. Okay, I'm going to try and friend her. Maybe she'll friend me back. And then you start to participate in their conversation. I hate it when people are new and they're all lurky, like they're going back to like 1987 and 2007 and like liking stuff that I posted back then, or they're commenting on everything. But, like I comment on enough audiobook stuff where once a month, there's probably something where you could be like, oh yeah, I had that experience, or, and so you can just find people that you feel maybe an affinity to. I friend people all the time because they have a nice face, or like I like their hair. They have a great smile. I'm like, that's a good picture. Oh, I like their dog. Like they have a really cheerful smile, or they just pop up so many times that I'm tired of looking at their face, and so I just friend them, and then it stops suggesting. So like I friend people all the time in our community for random reasons, but they just stick out to me somehow, and I'm like, friend, and then maybe they friend me back, maybe they don't, but I don't often pay attention. It's a little safer sometimes to do that in our community. There's less likelihood of somebody having, wildly different backgrounds or beliefs, though that can be also true. But at least we know we're with fellow intellectuals, people who love books, people who care about ideas, people who have done their time as actors and have insight into the human condition and empathy. So, stuff like that, like take the chances, little chances, they turn it and go to the mixers, go meet people in person, all that stuff. Like just reach out, be present, take chances, and protect yourself too, because like there are assholes that wander out of the woodwork and you want to be protected from them. And it's okay to just be like, done, moving on. You don't have to let them infiltrate your being,
I'm going to add a tip too for those of us who feel really shy and go to a group event and it's like, oh, well, everybody already knows each other and they look really popular and happy and I feel all alone. Something I remind myself about that has really helped me make connections with the people who most resonate with me is like I don't have to connect with everybody. And if I wait and I'm patient and I just like stand at the wall and sort of look around and sort of see like, well, who else maybe is standing by the wall or where does there seem to be and sort of an organic opening and just take my time instead of sitting there telling myself the story of like, well, maybe nobody wants to be my friend and what if blah, blah, blah. Just like, hey, nobody's trying to exclude anybody. They've known each other for a long time. Like just wait, be open and find my people. Trust that my people are in there in that crowd somewhere and it doesn't have to be everybody in the crowd.
And we're also all so shot out of a cannon, excited to be present with each other, especially after the pandemic. But I remember like my first time coming off like a 2-month jag of recording, going out to coffee with someone. It was like, blah, blah, she's like, you've been recording a lot by yourself, haven't you? And I was like, yeah, I can't stop talking, so remember that too. It's not just that everybody has better best friends than you do. It's that they may just be so like, oh, hi, but I have 2 things on that front. I met more producers, made connections with more producers over the years, going and hiding in the like closed off dining room and eating muffins because I just needed some downtime. And so did those producers than anything I ever did at APEC. It's different nowadays. It's like all one room. But man, I had some great connections. I'd be like, I need a muffin. And I'd just sit in there and be like, they'd be like, oh, thank God, Amy, you're not going to hit me up too hard for work. I'd be like, no, not me. Like, they'd set the tone, right? And I'd be like, no, let's talk about dogs, But also on the other front, okay, so that was interesting. So there was a mixer recently, and there was a woman who was just like so overbearing that I couldn't have conversations with the people I was having conversations with, who was like trying to force me to do things, who like grabbed my hand and would not let it go. I mean, who was like both physically and emotionally overwhelming to the point where I was like, please go away. And she was like, take off your mask so I can take a picture. And I was like, I don't want to. And then I did it like a chump, like somebody told me to do it. And so I obeyed them. And then I was like, and then she's like, well, I want to take more pictures. And I was like, I don't actually want my mask off and I don't want my picture taken. Like, please stop this. And so there's those are 2 sides to that same coin, right? There were all these amazing people, like very successfully, like being present with each other and being supportive of each other and not trying to evoke a specific response from anybody in the room. And so there's some sweet spot that I think people innately find. And, I'm neurodivergent. I do not easily find the sweet spot. It doesn't always come naturally to me. So I think that maybe if you are someone who tends to overwhelm or who tends to underwhelm, think about finding where is that sweet spot? Like, can I model myself? Like my friend Rachel Fulgenetti walks into a room and everyone is just like, I want to be your friend. She just has she's really grounded earth mother, but also glamorous, like exciting. But she has this total package of something that people want, like she's warm, she's funny, and people just sort of like, I want to be your friend. She walks into a room with that energy. And so I think like sometimes I just go, what would Rachel do? What would somebody who is innately good at these things do? Can I do a little bit of that? Like, can
Yeah,
I
bring
do a
in your
little
acting
more
skills
of
and
that?
play the part of someone who knows
Yeah,
how to find that balance really well.
exactly. And I always tell people when I'm doing lectures, and I'll get off this topic, is like, um, I say, do you feel nervous about like promoting yourself or reaching out or all that, and you feel like you may be unworthy or you're bothering people, and then everybody raises their hand, and I was like, so you're actively harming my ability to cast you. I need to know this stuff about you. I need to know who you are. I need to know stuff about you. Like, not just me, all of us who are in that position. Like, so if you think about it, it was like my mom. There was this thing from a book, I think it was called The Real Me, when we were kids. Every time I leave house for a party, my husband and I still do it kind of jokey, but not really jokey. When we leave the house for a party, she'll go, give a good time, right? And so it's about, are you trying to get something from the person? Or are you trying to give them something they need? They need a good time too. They need to know stuff about you. And so it's like, you have to ask also the question, if you're kind of wallflower kind of feeling in your heart, could there be something I'm keeping from someone that they need?
Mm.
Is that helpful, or was that way too bossy? I
No,
don't know. It's
that,
hard for me
that,
to gauge.
that was a beautiful concept to help you open up. Just that
Yeah.
part of yourself is what the person that you're talking to needs. And if you
Yeah.
hide that part of yourself away rather than being open and generous with it, then you're not allowing them the fullness of their experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the good time they were seeking when they left their house. I have to tell you this thing. I can't remember who it was. I feel bad. But I was at a mixer in New York this year, and this woman walked up to me and was like, "Hey, time." I was like, "How do you know this phrase? Did you also read The Real Me?" And she was like, "No, no, you mentioned it on a podcast that your mother always says it. Now we always say it." I was like, "Oh my God." So I filmed her and I sent it to my mother. I was like, "Oh my gosh, look, you're still being quoted all these years later." Now I can't remember who it is. I'm sorry.
Whoever you are, if you're listening, reach out to Amy and be like, "It was
me." Yeah.
Amy, if you were to name one thing that it would be helpful for narrators to understand about a producer's process, what would that one thing be?
Our job is like infinitely harder than you think it is. Like don't sleep, like worry about heart attacks hard.
What contributes to that difficulty?
The time pressures of the industry, difficulties getting assets. I mean, all the way down the line. Like, we have trouble getting the assets from the publishers, who have trouble getting it from the print publishers or the print department of their publishing company. It's all that stuff's hard. There's people have a lot of needs that are counter to what we need from them. And they're not always easy about it. Sometimes they're really easy about it, and they're generous and they're kind and they're helpful, and they still need what they need. Sometimes it's not that easy. And I can't tell you how many times a day my heart clenches because of something. So and stuff goes wrong. I mean, I remember being with a big time publisher producer. We were supposed to do a panel at APAC on Zoom for remote APAC, and he didn't show up. And he called in like halfway through, and I was like, "Fine, I can talk for 5 of us," But halfway through, he was like, "You guys, my gear melted down. One guy didn't show up, and then the author, something weird happened." And it's like, that is not just a day in the life of a producer. That is a moment in the life of a producer. It is. I was a catering manager, and my whole job was to like prepare so that nothing went wrong on the big day. And then once I got to the event, my job was to manage the things that went wrong on the big day. And that is what, it's the whole job. It's the same job.
So how can narrators help you with that? I mean, you've already talked about reading the instructions.
Yeah. I mean, I think, okay, get ahead of stuff. if you're going on vacation or you think you might be going on vacation and you might miss those pickups that will totally blow not just our deadline, but the publisher's release, their simultaneous release, like get ahead of it. Always assume there's going to be pickups and always assume nobody knows when they're going to be. But if there's a 3-day to 3-month window that you think it might be, that you might not be available, we need to know. Openings and schedules filling up, you audition for a job. Oh, so many people are so great about this. You audition for a job. I can't tell you whether you got the job for 3 weeks because I'm waiting to hear. And I don't want to be like, oh, still waiting, because it's obvious that we're still waiting. And so it's not like you didn't get the job. I know nothing. And so people are so great. They're like, hey, PRH just called. They just gave me 2 10-hour books for the same time period. I can still do your job if I want to take them, unless I'm holding the space for you, but you got to tell me by like probably noon tomorrow. Otherwise I need to take those jobs. And in that case, my next availability will be November 13th, and I can hit the ground running then. Is that possible? And then my only choice, then that gives me ammo to go to the publisher and be like, hey guys, we're going to lose some of these people. If you really want them in the mix, we're going to have to nudge the decision makers, that kind of thing. That stuff is incredibly helpful. And people are so good at that. Not always so good at the second half. The main thing I would say for me is if you have a job booked in my studio and you have, a big important commercial or something come up, obviously you need to cancel. I always say, we're not here to ruin your career. So have at it. We understand. Tell me the why. That's so helpful to us. So we know you're not being like, oh, I don't feel like coming in today. I wanted to go surfing, that kind of thing. But if you are in my studio and you habitually show up 45 minutes late, ask yourself, why do I feel like that's okay? That's costing either Amy or the publisher an hour of billable time. Possibly both. And how is that okay? It might not be okay. We might put up with it. We might talk to you. There's a lot of things that we'll do depending on the situation, who you are, what you're working on, how long we've worked with you. But it's a good question to ask yourself, why do I feel like that's okay to do that all the time? Because I'm pretty sure Amy doesn't feel like that's okay. I'm going to keep hiring the people who do that habitually because they are valuable to me. But I then have to navigate. Do I lose that hour of pay? Do I pass it on to the publisher? Do I talk to the publisher about it because they need to know why they're paying for it? I'm never going to want to out somebody, but how do I navigate that without getting anyone in trouble, but without being straightforward with my client too? There's a lot of stuff to navigate, and these are really tricky situations. So I also have a lot of several people who really put a crimp in the works. They'll be like, oh, I can't come in till 12 tomorrow. Okay. And then on Friday, I need to go by 2. All right. But at least tell me, my kid's sick, I don't know. Help me out here. Give me something. But if this happens all the time with somebody, I'm a lot less likely to hire them again, And here's the thing. I have ADHD. I have never shown up on time for anything in my entire life. If it's super important and I'm on, say, an author job, I show up half an hour early. But I put a gun to my own head to get there. You know what I mean? I've never willingly showed up on time to anything where there's not a gun to my head. But I'm so stressed if I arrive early. I can't tell you, I get agita. But when it's important and I have to, I do. But we all know each other. We're all casual with each other. We're all friends, and we're all in community, and we understand each other's issues. So how within that box, within that paradigm, do you not screw someone over? There's a way. I don't know what it is, but I would say that's one of the single most difficult parts of our job is then we have to add days because the session's not done. So I have to either bump someone, put your job a month down the road or a week down the road, send someone in on a Saturday for the 2 hours that it's really hard. So those are things that really they muck up the works. But in general, people are generous and kind, Sorry, I don't want to end on a dark note there.
Oh, we have another question. We're good.
Okay. Yeah, don't worry. We'll bring it up and end upbeat. But just to wrap up sort of this piece, I'm hearing the theme of communication, respect, and I also sort of wanted to put. I'm mindful we're talking a little bit more business here than craft, but I want to put a button. I think some narrators who are communicative are afraid. We know how many emails are in your inbox, and so we're afraid to send you emails like, hey, I don't know if you already cast this job, but just so you know, or like, hey, I'll probably have the pickups by then, but my vacation's in 2 months, and just in case. And
we have to know this. We have to know it. We cannot function without that information. I don't care how many emails there are. If I get the ones with the information I need, there's no equivocation there. We need that email.
Just wanted to put that button on there for those of us who, I know there are many narrators in the industry who are like, I don't want to overwhelm their inbox. It's like, if it's pertinent information to the job, like over communicate rather than under communicate.
Yes, 100%. We need that info. And sometimes I don't get it. I have a really lovely producer now who generally fields that information, and I can kind of take a look at it. I glance at every email, but I can be like, nope, he's and hit reply all. If you're on a reply all thread, hit reply all, because that means I could have missed it if I was just like skimming. Oh, and then I always think, oh, Andrew's on there. We'll be fine. He'll take care of it.
And that's back to the community theme of hiring that person who really fits into the community you're creating at your company.
Yeah. It's a lifesaver. I have a good team.
I will go ahead and bring us to our final question, which all three of us will get to answer. But Amy, I would love to hear your thoughts first. And the last question that we're going to think about today is, I would love to know right now, today, what is exciting to you about the craft of audiobook narration?
This is the thing where I said I didn't want to plan the answers, because the thing that is coming to me is the last thing that I thought I would ever say. Honestly, multicast. We do a lot of multicast. We enjoy multicast. We do a lot of dual narration. What I'm talking about is the particular kind in which everyone sits around in the same studio or is connected. So what I would call duet narration, or I don't know, what is the word for multicast where everyone's doing it at the same time? Simulcast? Simultaneous cast? Full cast?
I've heard some, but sometimes full cast, everyone's still recording in their own spaces, not simultaneously. So
okay, so this means that I think we need a new word for this thing.
Yeah.
Let's call it simulcast.
Mm-hmm.
And or simultaneous multicast. That is, I've been hearing a lot about how that's the way of the future. And I just did one with a friend of mine who only needed me to do a piece of it in my studio, and who had a really interesting set of gear and a whole way of doing it that I hadn't been privy to before. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. Like before, it was like, okay, we have 6 mics in a room, and then we have to edit out for like people shuffling and, somebody banging the music stand. We were in a take kind of thing. It was very difficult with some of these new techniques where like I could connect 4 of my studios or 4 external studios from elsewhere and do a full simultaneous, let's just call it simulcast, a simulcast. I am hearing, and I do think it's the new frontier. And somebody just said last night, we see that Audible is pushing that, or starting to really make that a thing that people are seeking and wanting and looking for now. So I think that's going to be a really interesting way of the future. It's something I have resisted up till now. And now I'm like, it's feeling exciting now rather than burdensome. And I think that is a great way to look into the future and the changes that are happening. And I'm grateful to be feeling that. And I'm grateful to my friend for showing me a different aspect or angle of how to do it. And so I think there's some excitement there for me of how do we make that work? And it's more work for everybody. I mean, it maybe be less work for an individual, but it's more opportunity and more work for everybody, and possibly more awards for everybody. Like if you've got 20 people on a award-winning thing, everybody gets an award, so there's some good things to come out of it too. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
That is very exciting. I,
Yeah.
growing up, always loved radio dramas, like just
Oh yeah.
do them. And when I'm listening to that kind of full cast, it feels to me like a throwback to radio drama, which I really enjoy. I mean, there's a place for a beautifully narrated single narration project. The book I'm listening to
Yeah.
right now is one of those. It's one narrator and it's just brilliant. But there's also a
Me
place
too.
where
Yeah.
there's also a place for that, full cast and lots of voices coming together to dynamically tell a story.
Yeah, I think it's really going to be interesting, and honestly, it's probably I'm very traditionalist in my approach to the business. I want to preserve things that worked for people and that still work, like you know, um, a fine edit, where people end up fixing like 800 to 3,000 little tweaky things, and a live proof, not a high speed proof, not a positron proof, like a live proof or working behind the fine edit, and real people who will catch the fact that, like, oops, she said it in his voice, like, but the bear was I don't know. Anyway, you know what I mean? I'm very interested in preserving things that worked, having directors, having engineers, having a place to go where you can perform for somebody in real time, having an air conditioned studio, all that. But I think too, there's a frisson of excitement. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you
Of
did.
excitement. Oh, yay. And you would know, right? You speak French, right?
That is one of, yeah. And that's also one of the words I always look up every time. And I just
You
have,
do. Mine is chignon. So anyway, but yeah, so there's a frisson of excitement here of a shift that is not that is not AI. That's not a shift that's not going to put people out of work. That's going to guarantee real humans work because it can't be done any other way, and that it can be done collaboratively. So, I mean, I'm just like, this is very nascent for me, but I'm excited to explore it.
and that work is also assisted by the new technologies. I mean, new technologies are not on their own bad. It's
Yes.
using them in a bad way. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Thank you
I
so much.
really love this podcast, you guys. I like that. I loved coming into it, knowing that we were going to be really talking. The format is so great because it forces you into a funnel to talk about technique, which I think is so often subsumed by conversations about networking, which is great. And I love talking about it. I could talk about it all day, but it's exciting to me to be able to really focus on talking about this. I feel like, I hope everybody that comes on feels that way, because this is stuff I think that maybe gets overlooked. And
Oh my
really
goodness, thank you.
Yeah.
That was our intention. This feels so great. Thank you so much.
So cool. Yeah, I'm excited. Good job, you guys.
When Sarah approached me about this concept for the podcast, that was exactly what she was wanting to talk about.
It's working.
That's what I'm always craving. This is what I want to talk about with everybody.
Yeah. No, I may have gone too far afield. I like that it focuses on. I was that way too when I first came into the industry. Like, I had questions for almost every, because I was a listener for so long. I had all these questions. Like, I remember approaching John McElroy and being like, why is your abridgment, because there was abridgment back then when I started in the olden days, why is your abridgment so much better than the actual book? And I had the same question for Karen Chakonsky too. I had listened to a bunch of her abridgments as Karen DiMattea before she became Karen Chakonsky, and I was like, why? What's happening here? What are you doing? And she told me that it's not a direct quote, but the spirit of it was that she had an author that loved her abridgment so much and said, why didn't my editor do this for me? And I thought it was so interesting because, sometimes everyone says like, oh, abridgment's horrible, but sometimes it keeps a book from being too bloated. And I thought it was just one of the books that we had talked about that I'd listened to, and I'd listened to the abridgment and then I listened to the full book, and I was like, no, why, what is it? And so, like, getting to meet my heroes, the producers that whose books I'd listened to before I was in the industry, and getting to ask them these questions was so much fun. So I hope you guys are having that same experience throughout this podcast, because what a luxury to be able to, like, ask all these questions.
Sarah, I would love to know what is exciting about the craft for you right now today.
Well, my answer does pertain less to the, what are we calling them, the simulcasts, and more to the like one narrator sitting in a booth doing the thing. And what I'm reflecting on today is that, as we know, audiobook narration can be such a physically exhausting medium. A lot of us call it like the marathon of the VO world as opposed to sprints. And, it's like putting on a one-person show 5 days a week or however many days a week you work the entire year long. And, for most of us, without the benefit of the energy from the audience that a one-person show would have. And so it's just, the pace can be grueling. So it's very, very tiring. And we talk a lot in the community about how to mitigate that grueling pace, how to care for ourselves, set healthy boundaries, eat right, exercise, do these things we need for self-care. And today I was thinking, yes, and is there beauty to that grueling pace that we can also appreciate? And, not to over romanticize it, because I do think the self-care and the boundaries, that is a really important element. But I also think there's something so beautiful in dedicating our bodies and our hearts and our spirits so utterly to this art, and like how that may translate to the gift we're giving to the listener. So that's what I'm reflecting on today.
That is very cool. Yeah, like I always feel like we've been through the war together. Like there's something about that, having gone all out like an athletic team or a solo athletic endeavor.
Jesse Eisenberg, like after he recorded his first, there's like some quote of him on the internet being like, "Listen, I've climbed an actual mountain. I've done 16-hour film shoot days like this. I've never done anything as physically exhausting as this." I think it's hard for people to understand, because it looks like, well, you're just sitting in a booth reading. Like, what is so tiring? But I think what you don't understand until you're doing it is how incredibly all involving it is. And it is a physically act,
exhausting,
because the emotions are in our bodies. So these emotions we're bringing forth are physical. So
and you're using technique to deliver it into the world too. It's like, this is your jaw and your placement and all of that is doing so much work. And you have to keep your head from moving while you do your hands. It's like you're doing it all well, like still as a statue, lest you rustle your clothing,
and get off center with the mic, go off mic. I have to keep my mouth in the right spot so
Totally.
the sound goes into the mic appropriately. Oh, that is a beautiful thought, Sarah.
Can we ask that of you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to say that I made these notes before I actually made these notes this morning, but it is exactly what you spent most of this evening and our discussion talking about, Amy, which is community. I literally wrote down, what's exciting for me is the audiobook land.
Audiobook
land. Because I have recently had a lot of in-person interaction with other narrators. I saw you a couple weeks ago up in Michigan at the APA Social. I had dinner 2 different nights last week with 2 different narrators who were in Cincinnati from out of town, and got to, spend a couple hours with them. I saw Jeremy Carlisle Parker, who's one of my best friends from college, but is now an audiobook narrator as well. And she and I rode up and back to the Michigan Social together. And so 11 hours in the car where we chatted constantly, and just...
That sounds blissful.
It was blissful.
To be able to spend that much time with your best friend.
And just the people in this audiobook community are what excites me right now. Not the AI, the people, the humanity, the supportive nature of the way that we interact with each other, how much we learn from each other that I am able to give and I am also able to receive on that learning. Just the audiobook community is a delight, and I am really glad to be part of it. And so talking about it so much in our conversation today was really fun for me. The whole time I'm like, that's what I was going to answer the last question with.
I am too. We're so lucky to have found. I always tell people, like, that because I used to be an animation actor and do a lot of toys and video games, things like that. I always say to people, like, I love hanging out with, voiceover people because we have to go from 0 to like in, 6 seconds. And then you add a layer of book nerd to it for actors. Yep. You've got like, these are my people, man. These are my people. I feel lucky to have found so many, it's just that we're all in one place, How often do you find so many of your people in one room? Oh my gosh. At APAC this year, after not seeing people for so many years, I walked into that mixer and I just burst into tears. And it wasn't seeing people. It was hearing the voices en masse because it was that small room, a banquet room. And I walked in and there was this wall of sound and it was this joyful, like, narrator voices, like all my friends and acquaintances in this whole community that I love. And I saw Patria Bouchard and I was just like, what? She gave me this big hug. She's like, I know. It was so great. It was hearing the voices. It was so great. We're home.
I mean, we get to tell incredible stories with amazing people, and that is a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a blessing. Well, Amy, this has been a delightful discussion. Thank you so much for sharing of your time and your wisdom. I have enjoyed every second of our conversation. It has been a joy to have you on the Crafting Audiobooks podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun. It's a good show.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Crafting Audiobooks. We've been your hosts, Jennifer Jill Araya
and Sarah Beth Goer,
wishing you happy audiobook listening and/or crafting.
Bye for now.